consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Priscilla Simon.
Having some audio difficulties with Priscilla's mic. We'll see if we can get that turned on.
Are you there?
Yeah, we got you now. Go ahead.
My bad. Sorry about that. All right. 420 Radio News, Tuesday, August 12th, 2014. Oh, happy birthday, sis. All right. The Prince of Pot is back in Canada after 5 years in a U.S. prison. Mark Emery, the cannabis culture publisher and marijuana seed seller, crossed from Detroit, Michigan into Windsor, Ontario, Canada this afternoon. Dozens of supporters met Mark Emery there, joined by his wife, marijuana activist Jody Emery, and lit up joints and vape pens to celebrate his arrival. When Emery was arrested almost a decade ago, the U.S. DEA proclaimed his arrest was a, quote, significant blow to the U.S. legalization movement and that reformers would have, quote, one less pot of money to fund their activism. Since that day, July 29, 2005, 8 states and D.C. decriminalized marijuana, 13 states and D.C. legalized medical marijuana, 11 states legalized use of CBD oil, and 2 states legalized marijuana commerce. Ooh.
Wow, what a significant blow. Gee,
Yeah.
we really suffered by you putting Mark Scott Emery in prison, DEA. Gosh, what a amazing event there, huh? Yeah, as predicted and as expected, all Mark Emery's prison sentence did was galvanize the people who want marijuana legalization to push harder for it, and created another brand new activist in the incomparable Jody Emery, who's now getting serious discussion in Canadian national political news about running with the Liberal Party. And working with Justin Trudeau and those guys. I mean, she's appearing on Canada's versions of like Meet the Press and Face the Nation and all that, and getting some serious political headway in becoming an elected official, becoming an MP there in Canada. So DEA, this should teach you the lesson that fighting hard against our heroes and against the people that are funding marijuana legalization is only going to hurt you in the long run. So hey, you got more people to go after? Go after them. We'll just keep overgrowing the government.
Oh, yeah. The Don't Be a Lab Rat campaign to convince teens not to smoke pot didn't last 24 hours before someone smoked pot in one of the human-sized rat cages. The campaign features 2 such human-sized cages, a TV ad, and 3 theater ads designed to convince teenagers that there isn't sufficient data on marijuana use, so their experimentation with weed makes them lab rats in Colorado's so-called, quote, legalization experiment. A CBS Denver reporter who visited one of the cages found someone had crossed out negative and scrawled in positive in a sign touting marijuana's, quote, negative effects. Someone had also scrawled, quote, smoking weed saved my life, and CBS photographed a young man toking up inside a cage. Organizers of the campaign plan to add more such cages to schools and other locations.
They are so tone deaf and clueless when it comes to how are we going to convince teenagers to wait until they are adults. Did you get to see any of these cages, Priscilla? You seen them yet?
I haven't made it down that way to downtown, or I haven't seen them yet.
If you do, please take a picture with one of them and tweet it out to us so that we can see.
Yeah, I will.
Because this is exactly what I predicted would happen. Although I actually said I'd take a bunch of kids and sit them in the lab rat cage with a sign that says, "Where's our free weed?" But this kid took it one further. He went out and just smoked some weed in the cage. And that's bound to keep happening as long as you continue to try to use scaremongering to get kids to not smoke pot. Mason DeVert put it best. The line used to be, this is your brain on drugs. Now the line seems to be, well, this is your brain. It might fry on drugs. to try to introduce this doubt or, seem like it's some sort of experiment. Look, teenagers have been smoking marijuana since the 60s, and I'm not encouraging teenagers to do it, but the facts are that we haven't seen a huge detriment to society because some of the teenagers have done it. I can't tell you how many people, how many colleagues, some of the most respected doctors, lawyers, media personalities, writers that I know in the marijuana movement who started marijuana use as early as age 12 and seem to be functioning just fine. Again, I'm not recommending that. I perhaps have a nice, a different sort of selection of people, and I get to meet all the successful ones. Maybe there are lots of people who smoked weed when they were 12 or 13 that didn't turn out so good. But what I'm telling you here is we're not seeing a huge impact from youth marijuana smoking, not to the extent that it demands that we have this scaremongering tactics. You really want to make it so that kids don't want to smoke pot? Don't put a rat cage out there. Put a fake living room with a mom in mom jeans and a dad wearing, world's greatest dad t-shirt, watching 60 Minutes on the television, smoking joints. That would convince kids not to smoke pot because they'd see it as something boring, something that old people do, something that's not cool, something that's not rebellious. When you put this rat cage in front of them, it's just like an open invitation to be rebellious and to mock this fear-mongering. And this cage that got scrawled up, this one was at a skate park. Like, gee, what did you expect, fellas? And now they want to put a whole bunch of them at schools and other locations where kids hang out. All it's going to do is create more opportunities for fun little selfies, Twitter pics, and hashtag memes to go up about these stupid "Don't be Al a brat" cages.
Voters in Saginaw, Michigan will have the chance this November to decriminalize 1 ounce or less of marijuana within the city. The City Council voted 5-4 yesterday to place the initiative on the ballot after activists turned in 2,287 valid signatures out of the 3,800 collected, beating the statutory mandate of more than 2,000 signatures needed. The Saginaw City Attorney advised the mayor that the state law required the council to pass the initiative onto the ballot by today's date. The council was split on forwarding the initiative, but the mayor broke the tie, explaining that otherwise activists in attendance would file a lawsuit against the city that it could not afford to defend. The change would mostly be symbolic, as most marijuana possession charges are made at the state, not municipal level. It would remain to be seen whether city police would write local decrim tickets or make state misdemeanor arrests for small amounts of marijuana.
Well, I'm betting they would probably stick with the arrests. They're kind of fond of that, right? But we'll see. I mean, if this thing passes by a huge margin, in the like 2/3, 67% area, it might be tougher for cops than at least the city cops to be writing these state tickets. And they, another thing too is the city might be able to make some money off of those fines for decriminalization. That might be some pressure on those cops there to write more of those tickets. But what this does show is that the key to beginning your grassroots legalization campaigns is to start literally at the grassroots, to start at the municipal level. I get a lot of people with stars in their eyes dreaming of, legalizing their entire state, and it's a worthwhile endeavor. However, you've got to lay the groundwork for it. And the groundwork is getting these legalization or decrim or medical ordinances passed at the city level. And a lot of times they're just symbolic, but symbols mean a lot. This is what Massachusetts did when they wanted to go for decriminalization and medical marijuana on a statewide level. They did it in like 30 cities beforehand. And again, it didn't have much practical effect. People were still getting arrested and everything, but it was harder and harder to defend being against legalization when activists could show, hey, the people of 30 cities voted for this. And so that's what's happening in Michigan. We'll have all the coverage of election night 2014 on November 4th, Tuesday night, all the way from South Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon, Great White North of Alaska down to the Sunshine State of Florida, and we'll hit the middle of the country with Kansas and Michigan as well.
And voters in Wichita, Kansas may not be out of luck yet on a November decriminalization vote. In this morning's meeting, the City Council voted 7-0 to allow activists to work with the city legal staff to craft new petition language that could be voted on in April 2015. But the November vote isn't out of the question either. Activists fell short by 47 names on a petition to put decriminalization of 1 ounce on the ballot, and they plan to challenge the disqualification of hundreds of signatures over handwriting irregularities. August 28th is their deadline for inclusion on the November ballot. Meanwhile, Fire It Up Kansas, a legalization group, will debut 2 new billboards around Wichita supporting full marijuana legalization.
Well, good news there in Wichita. Man, I want so bad to be able to report from Kansas on election night for decriminalization. That would be so cool. 47 names is not a whole lot of names to have to recover. And if they're able to challenge some of these disqualifications, and they turned in more than twice as many signatures as they needed. So they ought to be able to find some signatures they can reclaim from the pile of discards there that would actually turn out to be valid. So I'm keeping my hopes up. I think we're going to have decrim on the ballot in Wichita this November.
Cecilia Hayther, a Chilean housewife suffering from breast cancer and lupus, is thought to be the first legal medical marijuana patient in South America. While Chile and most other South American countries have decriminalized the personal possession, usually 5 or 10 grams, of marijuana, no country has followed the example of states in the U.S. that have legalized medical use of marijuana. In June, Chile's Institute for Public Health granted Hayther an exemption to use Sativex, the whole plant cannabis extract manufactured by Britain's GW Pharmaceuticals. Anna Maria Gasmuri, president of the DEA Foundation, calls the move, quote, a very significant step in helping the 20 epileptic youngsters her foundation is treating with cannabis. Chile's center-right Amplitude Party has proposed legalizing the home cultivation of marijuana for personal purposes, and polls show support for medical marijuana in Chile hovering around 78%.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at the situation in South America. They didn't do medical at all, right? I mean, both North America and South America have demonized the use of cannabis for recreational purposes for years and years and years. Americans thought the best way to get around that would be to fig leaf the use of marijuana. Oh, no, we're not getting high. It's really medical. And it is in a lot of cases, of course. In South America, though, they took a different tack, and their tack was about addicts, and that we shouldn't criminalize addiction. In a sense, kind of a medical thing. They're saying that anyone who's using drugs on a regular basis who gets caught is some sort of addict, and we shouldn't criminalize them for their health condition, for being addicts. So not only are things like, 5 or 10 grams of marijuana decrim in Mexico and Central America and South America, but oftentimes even personal amounts of cocaine or meth or heroin or acid or anything like that, small amounts are decriminalized in these states. This move toward medical marijuana, I don't know, it's a little bit, I got a little bit of a problem with it, considering that it's GW Pharmaceuticals Sativex. That's more pharmaceutical marijuana, if you ask me. Oh, it's a sad 420 today. It's our last goodbye to, or so long, I should say, to Priscilla Simon, who has to get to her specially appointed 420 celebratory duties there in Colorado. Priscilla, thanks again for everything you've done, and we will see you on the show again.
Yeah, my pleasure. See you around.
Bye-bye. When we come back, we go behind the headlines on Colorado overestimating their tax revenues from legalized marijuana.
420 Radio, the home of marijuana experts.
Join us for the International Cannabis Business Conference September 13th and 14th in the Portland Ballroom at the Oregon Convention Center. The International Cannabis Business Conference will focus on the emerging cannabis industry in Oregon, the United States, and around the world, putting you in front of the industry's foremost entrepreneurs, political leaders, and attorneys. Also showcasing over 40 cannabis-related industry exhibitors, offering VIP lunches and free nightly networking events.